when looking back to trailers like Ruby Gilman, various thoughts popped up in my mind. The first one is that it is great that DreamWorks films continue with this interesting stylized approach to 3D animation compared to Disney, and of course having another film described as a parody of another Disney film, that being The Little Mermaid, released during the same time frame. But one thought actually popped the most to me, and that was on the various videos on YouTube such as shorts and whatnot that mainly put this film with such high praise before coming out. The people that are giving this movie too much positivity and credit because of an excellent film like Puss in Boots: The Last Wish. And this opened up the question as to why DreamWorks actually worries me, where because of their success with such positive films in 2022, it has kind of certainly spoiled a lot of people into thinking that this means DreamWorks should come out on top over Disney. And while in some cases that is certainly true, that everyone else at this point has a better edge than Disney, and I already discussed certain issues between the two studios, I still cannot help but think we are just putting them too high on a pedestal for these types of movies they want to produce, where disappointment will utterly look bad for them going into the next film if that is the case with things like Ruby Gilman. Because as a whole, despite even me saying that yes, DreamWorks is back creating fantastic movies, they still don't have the best track record, where they have balanced themselves out creating unique masterpieces while having a variety of films of utter dogshit quality in my opinion, or just mediocre films at best. This doesn't mean I'm complaining about their past as a whole and a company as well, it's just that I wanted to focus on what this trailer means for the studio going forward with different ideals, and of course mainly watching this over and over again makes me more worried about the perceived perception of such a film, mainly one that is just another FU to Disney like this studio has been since their very founding. And of course, this channel actually only exists today because of their films like Puss in Boots itself, where I'm very thankful for that, except for the copyright claim of course. I mean, yeah, I do have an affinity for films that DreamWorks have produced like Kung Fu Panda, How to Train Your Dragon, Megamind, and of course Shrek, but I also loathe films like Shark Tale, Boss Baby, Trolls, and especially the Bee Movie. I mean, I really hate this movie, I really do. I will explain more about that at another time, because no matter what you think about that very movie, it will always be pure trash logically. It's just that compared to others, they do have a better record of creating such original stories and actual quality sequels in some cases, but most times their executions are completely flawed and not sound in my opinion. And of course for someone like me, I'm just very disappointed that they only produced a select few of 2D animated films where mostly they saw success going into 3D as the first Pixar counterpart, which still upsets me because they have great films like Prince of Egypt and The Road to El Dorado. And then of course there is also the factor that I take in that I was always a Disney fan growing up, which carries some bias into that because of my closer connections to these stories and the theme parks and looking up to Walt Disney himself, but that still didn't stop me from wanting something else and enjoying other studios because I really do. I just askew to one more differently, which has slowly actually faded over time growing up, unfortunately. And going back to the film that's going to be released in Teenage Kraken still harkens me back to why I enjoyed DreamWorks the most, because mainly they're a fairy tale parody. The reason why I get attracted to projects like Shrek or Madagascar is because they take their movie stories in the most unserious of ways with various animals and humans, and of course other mythical creatures in different settings, which is why I'm able to appreciate them as a studio. But then I'm also sometimes reminded that the concept doesn't always pay off, which is always a downside to their very studio, where this is where I must discuss the various ups and downs specifically of what this particular film is trying to represent by its own trailer. The main character of course is Ruby, who is a teenage Kraken who wants to fit in at high school, and portraying her in this fashion is very unique for what it tries to represent, while a character like Chelsea is the supposed popular girl of the school who is a mermaid, who is very similar in the vein of course Ariel from The Little Mermaid, which people like to compare and poke fun of. Basically, it has all the makings of the standard good DreamWorks movie, which is very exciting, where many people still seem to be attracted to this style of film. The wacky designs of the animation that people want from these movies that takes away from the stagnating styles that Disney has presented both in their own and Pixar's animation being more photorealistic or whatnot. But then again, of course their studios have branched out in certain scenarios as well, with Elemental coming up and of course Turning Red from before. And I just wanted to reiterate that I think it's entirely stupid to have this movie compared to the live action Little Mermaid. Like ever since the trailer was released a month prior and various content has released surrounding the Little Mermaid being shown, has prompted many to compare them, saying DreamWorks has this advantage even though they are hardly related in any way, and just to attempt to bolster a movie you haven't even seen, because of course remakes are generally bad and animation no matter what is typically good. Besides that, The Little Mermaid would definitely make more money than this film, because no matter what happens, nostalgia is a very powerful drug that will keep on churning throughout history and people will continue to watch. And the point of what I'm trying to make of my fears about a company like DreamWorks is how I just want to focus on the movie for being a movie rather than the studio as a whole that comes attached with them, because of the varying differences they really have, and why I want to focus more on what this trailer presents in story-wise. In my opinion, it's actually a very mixed trailer. For someone like me, it's a story about a teenage girl. Not saying I can't enjoy it, but in some ways it doesn't fully speak to me as a movie as many other DreamWorks films have done in the past, and of course what Pixar did with Turning Red as a movie that didn't relate to me. One that I don't think is really bad as a movie itself, but it's just, you know, the type of story that I am not attracted to. It's a case kind of similar to Elemental, where watching things like this, you already know what you're getting throughout the overall story. The outcast versus the popular one, using krakens and mermaids to represent that. Nothing unique story-wise where you actually know exactly how it's going to end by the actual plot of the trailer. But that also doesn't stop it from potentially being a unique story with flipping the script on fairy tales like they usually do, making the krakens as the heroes and the mermaids as the villain. A good twist for this kind of movie, and the messages that they want to show out of it about not hiding from who you really are and embracing that amidst everyone else who would usually shun things like that. Where I also like where they use this line to how mermaids are selfish, vain narcissists, and how people are just generally stupid and too blind to what they see, which is another point of attraction that gets people to watch it depending on your age. Of course, with the style of that trailer that reveals a lot about its main plot, is a new story for a newer generation to see while being vaguely similar in vein into other animated movies from before. But then again, I'm also upset how they sort of used the big climactic battle at the end from what I assume. The scenes where Chelsea is this big monster terrorizing the town, where this seems like something that skips what it showed from before being adorned by the human public to going toe-to-toe with these gigantic monsters, and I don't know how that ever helps me in that case to come on board when I actually know what to expect. I mean, I really shouldn't complain if that is it or isn't the final result and just enjoy the movie as is, but I just feel like it could have dropped that point and still delivered the main message to see regardless, and of course the internet's reaction, where it would have been served better by leaving it up to the imagination rather than coming out eventually throughout disappointment. After all, there is also various scenes that actually harken back to other comedic DreamWorks moments that we have already seen before, and it hardly does anything new in that very point. The major difference that I can tell to why this movie won't be as successful as these various videos try to make it out to be as The Little Mermaid Killer is because of how Puss in Boots was that type of movie that anyone could get into. Its message and themes are more simple enough that these movies just don't have, and it wouldn't connect to me as that as being someone like myself with different interests than a 16-year-old teenage girl story. When it comes down to it, the core of the world and its story is what should be focused on for its enjoyment rather than the perceived owning of Disney for having a parody characters that have young people listen to the stupid ass shorts that make widely inaccurate interpretations of DreamWorks solely based on Puss in Boots 2 because of the fact it's a good movie and Disney's bad because singing, amongst other things that we all know of today. The internet is such a powerful thing that it affects perception issues that can both have negative and positive effects that sometimes isn't good when looking at the criticism of movies like Mario compared to the public and expecting too much from a studio that is a truly mixed bag in terms of storytelling. The point I'm trying to make is that I just don't want this affecting the way that people should think about these various movies, where one can be the peak of storytelling only to find out that the next one could be mid and virtually destroy your hopes about upcoming projects, where most people hope for Kung Fu Panda 4 but also get drowned down by the news of crap like the Boss Baby or Trolls movies coming out, which is not exciting in any way. But then again, you also should be optimistic for such a thing if those reasons can pique your interest for something more fresh and original in that very case, and see if they can work to prove how much they offer because of how other companies like Disney just don't get the movies they make anymore. But just for the sake of things, please don't put everything on high pedestals. It sets up unreal expectations because of how you perceive other various studio animations, where for those who want to compare Disney to Illuminations and to DreamWorks, just stop. You're not making yourself look good by saying Illuminations is better than Disney because of the fact that they can make films that has a lot of money without regard to how stupid the Minion movies are as a whole and some of the simplicity of the Mario movie, which doesn't mean it's a great masterpiece by any means. Like I say, it doesn't apply to everyone, but it's just that these various videos that try to make it seem like that because of how one film can do extremely well, then the rest would actually virtually follow that message. I mean, I would want that to happen, but I know that's not a certain possibility, and that's the concern I really have for DreamWorks is because they're setting themselves up for such unrealistically high expectations amidst the public because of how shallow the other company has become in the public, where people wouldn't be able to fully enjoy these stories. The point of this very video, I guess, is just to maybe encourage more people to just take a broader or more closer look at the various projects, to embrace them or whatnot, at what they want to do with them, to explore different outlets of storytelling that could make for a great movie if it actually does well. I mean, if I hate one thing, I will hate it. If I love it, I will love it, and so on. Just that the various studios' history comes with a lot of unfortunate moments, like the end of their 2D animation. It's not a great worry. I appreciate DreamWorks for the company that it does and all of the actual magic that they actually present in the film, and if they're able to accomplish with that with this very movie, then I will be happy with them. I will be happy if any movie, even Disney, can actually create great films, because that is what I want to see. It's just that this video is just me being upset at various videos constantly just comparing these one film as the greatest and peak of all of animation. And with that said, I'm all done, so goodbye.